We are so excited that you're here tonight on this rainy night. We're glad to see you. I'm glad to see all of your faces. Glad you're here. So as Michael mentioned, we're going to be talking about supporting young adults as they transition to college. And we'll be speaking for about 45 minutes. Again, leaving time for question and answer. I know that's really, really important. Sometimes those questions and those wonders, things in your mind are really specific to yourself, to young adults or to young adults in your life. So I'll definitely be sure to leave questions at the end. So I'm just going to take a moment here and share my screen, and then we will get started. All right, here we go. So just quickly to tell you a little bit about myself, as Michael mentioned, so I'm an educator. I've been in the realm of education for 18 years. Most of that, if not all of that, has been in higher education. I did work for 10 years at a transition program on a college campus. And that's really where my passion for working with students and their families, just as they are leaving high school and entering college, that's really where that began. That transition program, I did have 100% of students that had some sort of a disability, a learning challenge, mental health challenges, physical mobility challenges. And so I've really found my niche and my passion is in guiding families through some of the things that K through 12 and colleges don't really tell you, and really important things that you need to know about making that transition. Now I am a college coach, so I'm founder of Fast Forward College Coaching and supporting students across the nation, really, right now virtually, through college support, working one-on-one with them, and also doing some executive functioning support, really helping students kind of tie together all of the pieces that help them be successful in college. And I'm also the author of this book, Sharing the Transition to College. The first half of the book is geared towards students with about 30 tips for students and activities and exercises, reflection activities in there for students. And then the second half of the book is geared toward parents. So it truly is a book that you can share because you are going to be sharing this college journey together. So my presentation is going to be geared towards students. So I will be talking to you students, and I'm so glad that you're here attending the presentation. So we are going to get started. So whether you have, a disability or not, what I've found that is the trick to college success is learning the new systems of college. So you've spent a long time, in K through 12 education, whether you've been in a special education classroom or not. And higher education, the way that higher education works, the way that it's set up is completely different than high school, than K through 12. And sometimes kind of these tricks and these nuances aren't really taught to you, or they're not told to you, or they're told to you by people who have been through college, maybe in a very simple way without explaining kind of some of the more complicated steps, and some of the differences. So this today being here is really taking the first step towards learning the systems of college. So if you're here, whether you're in person, today, or if you're listening to this recording, you are already taking the first steps towards being successful in college. So I'm going to talk primarily today about 4 important skills that you'll need to succeed in college. So the first one is, understanding yourself. The first step is understanding differences, between high school and college. The second step is self-awareness. So understanding yourself, understanding the things that you need to be successful, whether that's academically, whether that's residentially, socially. The third step is understanding a little bit more about the landscape of disability supports in college. And then the fourth step is self-disclosure. And we're going to talk about the differences between self-disclosure and self-advocacy and kind of what that looks like and why it's important. So the big 4 is what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing that's important to know is, what are the differences between high school and college? You don't need to memorize this slide. It's a little bit complicated. It talks a little bit about laws. But basically what I want you to know is that the differences between high school and college are based in the laws that support both of these different environments. So because there are different laws that support high school than college, that's why sometimes supports are different. That's why students need to do some different things in college that maybe you didn't need to do in high school. So this slide is really just presenting you with the why things are different. All right, now I don't know if you can read some of the smaller writing on here, so I'll just highlight a couple of the things, but these are some important differences between high school and college. So I'm going to go down to the second line there in white that says IEP. So in high school, students that have an IEP or a 504 plan, high schools are obligated to follow those plans. In college, this is not the case, and this is often a misconception. Colleges do use and often refer to a student's IEP or a 504, but they're not mandated to follow it. Often colleges don't really know the ins and outs of your IEP, and they often rely on you, the student, to explain it to them. So that would be a great step this summer. You know, students, if you don't know what an IEP is, or if you don't know if you have one or not, you know, that would be a great thing to ask a teacher or a family member and say, hey, you know, can I take a look at my IEP so I know what's in there? Because in college, you're going to be the person who needs to explain to the disability office, if you choose to register there, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too. So knowing what's in your IEP is really, really important. You know, and the way I explain the IEP to students that I work with is the IEP is just a document. It's just some things in writing that talk about things that help you be successful. So it kind of makes sense that you would want to know the things that help you be successful in high school, because you would want those same things in college. And those things that help you be successful in college are called accommodations. So the only other one I'm going to go down to and highlight here is the second white row on the left-hand side that says receiving accommodations. So it's really important to know that in college, students really need to be in the driver's seat. Students are, and I have a chart in the presentation, students are going to be having conversations with the disability office. Students are going to be recognizing or identifying accommodations that are important. Students are going to need to be talking with their faculty, with their professors about their accommodations. And then a final step, when you have a test or an exam in college, then students need to request to use that accommodation. So accommodations, if it's a word that maybe you're unfamiliar with, hopefully by the end of this presentation, you're going to be very familiar with that word is. But again, in college, students are really going to be primarily responsible for identifying and for using those accommodations. But this is a really great slide to use families or parents, you know, with your students. And so if you haven't had a really explicit conversation about the differences between high school and college, this would be a great time to do it. Sometimes the school team thinks that parents are having that conversation, and sometimes parents are thinking that the school team is having that conversation. So if you're not sure, it's a great conversation starter even tonight, you know, to ask your student, you know, depending on their age, if they know the differences between high school and college. And these are some great, you know, conversation starters here on this slide. Okay, so students, so the next thing that you need to know to be successful is self-awareness. And this is something that I think I really drilled down to and I thought was really, really important. And I put a lot of these tips, you know, in my book. These are things that I found seem to be pretty simple, but really weren't talked about. And so that's why I listed quite a few of them here on the slide. Starting with the very first one, this might be simple. How do you wake up in the morning? Do you wake up to an alarm on your phone? Does mom or dad come in and wake you up in the morning? Do you have an alarm clock? Do you turn off that alarm clock if you wake up, and then who comes back in to remind you to wake up again? It's a very simple skill, but it's something that's really important in college because waking up in the morning and getting to class on time, whether it's in person or whether it's virtual, is really one of the keys to college success is attendance, is attending class. And you can't attend class if you don't wake up first. So think about how you wake up right now. You know, think about writing. Is writing something that's a challenge for you? Is it something that's easy for you? If it's a challenge and you have some support in school, you know, let's think about that and identify some of those supports that you get in high school. because that might be an indicator that maybe when you get to college, you really want to connect with that writing center right away. You know, you want to ask about a tutor if there's a particular class that you're struggling with. So, you know, again, I think self-awareness is really important because sometimes, you know, students and families were really excited and thinking forward and thinking about college. And sometimes we think we want, you know, we're going to leave K through 12 behind. But I think you're, especially right now, if you're a junior, senior, or you know, going to be graduating soon, this is a great moment to pause and to kind of look around and ask yourself these questions. You know, how do I plan my homework assignments right now? Do I have someone in school who helps me do that? Do I have a teacher who gives me a graphic organizer who says, here are the steps, I'm going to break down this big assignment into something that's really small? Well, if I have a teacher that does that for me now, then that might be something that works for me that I like. Then is there someone who's going to do that for me in college? And the answer to that is there's not going to be someone who's going to do that for you in college. So that's a great thing to know now. You know what? And maybe even ask your high school teacher, can I have some copies of this planner? Can I have some copies of this graphic organizer? I really like the way this works, and I'd like to bring it with me to college. And the last thing that I, you know, want to mention on here is talking about textbooks. You know, in college, you're going to have an option of how you would like to read or listen to your textbooks. So think about that. If you know, you may not have a choice in right now in high school, but if you did, right, or you may be someone who likes electronic textbooks right now, that's an option for you in college. And so that's good to know, so that when you go to college, you can kind of start that process of getting electronic textbooks early. So knowing your systems and knowing what helps you now is really important. So the slide has a lot of information on it, and I know that. I don't expect you to memorize it all right now, but I just wanted to show there's different types of supports in college. The row on the left in red, these are supports that all colleges are mandated by law to have. Every college is mandated to have a person or an office on campus that provides supports to students with a documented disability. So these are things that are free, there's no cost, but these are things that you as a student need to reach out and ask for. Your college will not know if you have a learning difference. You may think that if that's something you choose to put in your application or in your application essay, well, then the college should know and they will reach out to you. They most likely will not. At the admissions office and disability support office are two different offices, and they often don't necessarily talk to each other. You know, and by law, sometimes they're not allowed to. They're not allowed to make admissions decisions, you know, based on knowledge of a disability. So just knowing that there's an office on campus that can support you for free is really important. The center column are other types of academic services that are also free. So this would be the writing center, tutors. It could be peer tutors or professional tutors. There could be support groups. Again, these are things that you need to seek out. I have to say, you know, in working with students in different colleges across the country, there are some colleges who are doing a really great job proactively sending emails to students every week. You know, and again, they don't have to, but they send emails to students across campus saying, you know, here are our offerings. Here's what we have. You know, are you struggling? Here's a group for that. Here's the hours of our tutors or our learning lab. And then the third column, so these are supports that are fee-based. So that means there's a cost for these. Often these are sessions that are run by learning specialists. So individuals who are kind of similar to like your special education teacher in school, which just means that they have some more professional development, some more learning on how students learn best and strategies and techniques to help students. And these kind of different tier of support systems can meet with students once a week, usually up to 3 times a week would be the most. And there are some lists of colleges, you know, online that are, you know, that do have these kind of learning, sometimes they call them learning centers or academic success centers. But just know that these type of supports are above and beyond what colleges are required to provide, and that's why they often have a fee associated with them. So we're going to talk a little bit about the accommodation process, kind of as I mentioned in the beginning. And the next slide will give you some examples of what accommodations are. But I just want you to know that, again, getting accommodations in college is really 100% the student's responsibility. And this is kind of one of those nuances that I find families and students don't always know about. And I'm not sure why, because I think it's really such an important tool. It's really such an important piece of advice. So again, I know I sound like a broken record with the word accommodation, but I find that accommodations are really, really helpful in college. So, there's some links down here with some articles that I've written for other websites about, why talking about accommodations is important. Okay. So I've referred to this as a disability support office, but every college has a different name. Some colleges will call this the accessibility office. Some colleges will call this the student support office. And so if you're a student that has a documented disability, which means if you've had a 504 or an IEP in high school, then this is the office that I really recommend you have conversations with kind of as you're going on tours, as you're considering colleges, whether it's through a phone call or if you're actually on campus visiting this office, this person, this staff in this office is going to primarily support you, and primarily support you and your needs really throughout your 4 years. So it's important to know, kind of the philosophy of the office, I guess. I was just speaking to a parent who went on a campus tour and was really surprised that kind of the personality of the director of this office wasn't really friendly. And that was important to the parent because, and to the student, because the student was going to be coming to this office and asking questions. And so the family noticed that when they toured another campus, just the atmosphere of the office was a little bit different, a little bit more welcoming. And so that was something that was important to them. But you're welcome to contact these offices as much as you want to ask questions. But really, once a student is accepted, it will become the student's responsibility to communicate with this office. So that's really important to mention. And at the end of my presentation, I've included some worksheets, and I've included a worksheet that will help you organize not only kind of your applications that you've submitted to college, but also will help you organize contact information for the different disability service offices. All right. So these are just some examples of typical college accommodations. Sometimes students don't realize that things that are helpful for them in high school can translate to college. Sometimes things that are helpful to you in high school may not be available in college, and that's important to know too. But often supports can be the same, but they're just called something different. And in college, accommodations are separated into different categories, which can be a little confusing. So there are accommodations that students will receive kind of for every day, in your classes, classroom accommodations. But then when there's a test or an exam, there's kind of a separate group of accommodations that are called testing accommodations. So it's important to familiarize yourself with this language. I think before you go to college, it's almost like college kind of keeps this a secret. And I don't know why it doesn't tell students this language, but it's really important that you know these words because you need to know what to ask for when you go to college. So this slide can be really helpful. I also wanted to mention in the bottom corner, the residential accommodations. So the same office, the disability support office, if you need residential accommodations, will help you as well. So, I've worked with students who had difficulty with the kind of combination locks on their mailboxes. And so this office helps students get a number keypad on their mailbox. This is also where you would request a first floor room if you wanted to do that. If you were also requesting a single room for a medical reason, this is the same office where you would request that too. And I'm going to go a little bit quickly through this slide just because the next slide is really visual and colorful. And I think a lot easier to look at, but I just wanted you to have the kind of the words here. I wanted you to have the information. So when you go to college, registering with the office and then actually requesting to use your accommodations are two different things. So I just want you to know that the words are here, but I'm going to go to the much more beautiful slide next. This is a little more visually appealing. I'm a visual learner, so I really like colors and I need to see the, the shapes. So I thought this was more helpful. Okay. So step number 1. So once you are accepted to a college, it doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't matter if it's Conn College, if it's Gateway Community College, if it's Goodwin University, I think now, if it's a state school, right? Southern Connecticut State University, Eastern, if it's Wesleyan, it doesn't matter. Once you're accepted to college, I suggest the next step is to register with the disability office right away. Even if you don't know much more than your deposit and that you want to go there. So that's step number 1. Step number 2. So at the beginning of the semester, when you know what classes you have, right? And that's really important. You need to know what classes you have. That's when you're going to reach out to this office. And a lot of offices now have this online. So you're going to fill out a form online and you're going to request accommodations. The reason you want to wait, and if we were in a classroom right now, I would ask, I wouldn't tell you, I want students to tell me. So I would be asking you, why do you think you want to wait until you receive your classes? Because let's say one of the accommodations you had in high school was in your math classes, you used a calculator. Well, we don't want to apply for that accommodation in college if you don't have a math class. Right? So it's important to wait to see what classes you have and then to register to receive accommodations. Okay, step 3. So the office, once they, usually have a conversation with you, you talk about accommodations, they will give you accommodations in the form of a letter. And this is something that's emailed or it could be given to you in a hard copy. And this is something that you would bring and give to your professors. So your professors don't know anything about you when you enroll in class. Right? They don't know that you have a disability. So giving them this letter and then having a short conversation is really important. If you feel uncomfortable with that, there's help. Someone in this office in a disability office might be able to help you. Sometimes that's what I do, as I help students write emails or I help them kind of role play those conversations about what they would say. And then step 4, when you have a test or an exam, then you need to go back and request to use some of those testing accommodations. So I think probably one of the most important slides in my presentation is this one right here. So if you have your phone and you want to take a picture of the slide, I'll wait a second. Or, if you get the slides, after this presentation, from Michael or from Beth, then this is the slide to keep. Okay, and I'm just checking my time. I want to make sure, okay, leave time for question and answers. All right, so the last skill that's important to know is talking about yourself, maybe disclosing, and that's certainly your choice if you'd like to disclose if you have a disability or not, and then advocating for yourself. So, what do these 2 words mean? What is the difference? So the first one is kind of acknowledging. So self-disclosure means you're kind of stating a fact. You are sharing with someone, with the disability office or with a professor, that you need some things, to help you to be successful. So that's self-disclosure. Self-advocacy is speaking up for yourself when you need something. And self-advocacy can apply to any situation. That can be if you've lost an ID in college, if you've lost a laundry card, being able to speak up for yourself and ask someone and say, hey, I've lost my laundry card. Can you tell me where to get a new one? It could be advocating for yourself with a roommate. If your roommate invites friends over to the room, maybe that aren't wearing masks, right? And that makes you feel uncomfortable. Advocating for yourself, right? And having a conversation, that's self-advocacy. If you're struggling with your mental health, if you don't know where the counseling center is on campus and you feel like you might need a little bit of support, being able to ask your RA and to share, that you're struggling and asking how to get in contact with that office, that's self-advocacy. Or if you have a dietary need, if you have a food allergy and you have some concerns about some food that you're seeing in the dining hall, being able to speak up for yourself and advocate, that's an example of self-advocacy. And so I really encourage students to practice, as much as you can. And parents, I know it can be hard to step back, but I really encourage you, to let your students, for example, make their own doctor's appointments. That's a really great way to start that self-advocacy. Allow your students to start paying for things when you're in the grocery store, even if you're ordering takeout, to allow your student to kind of formulate the tip and give a tip. As many situations as you can, allow them to speak up for themselves. So this kind of makes me think about, I know it's kind of a silly example, but kind of the difference between high school and college, and it ties into self-advocacy, is imagine you're going to a restaurant. So when you go to a restaurant and you're at your table, right? Usually restaurants will have a waiter, someone or a waitress, someone that comes over to you and says, do you need more water? How is your food? Are you ready to order? Do you need ketchup? Is there anything else you need? But in college, right, there is no waiter, right, in that metaphor. You need to be the person who, if you need water, you need to get up and get it for yourself, right? If something doesn't taste right or it's not what you ordered, you need to speak up for yourself. So everything in college is there for you, either on the campus or on the virtual campus, right? But you need to be the person that asks and that advocates for yourself. No one is going to come up to you and ask how things are going. Okay, and here are a couple kind of silly examples about the difference between self-disclosure and self-advocacy. So the first example, number one, so self-disclosure is just stating, hey, I wear glasses, right? Self-advocacy is speaking up for yourself. Well, I wear glasses, but I lost them. Can I sit in the front row of the classroom so I can see this PowerPoint presentation, right? Advocating for yourself, speaking up to the professor. Example two, right? Self-disclosure says, I'm a student registered with the Disability Support Office, right? That's a statement. Self-advocacy is asking for something. So that might be, I requested electronic textbooks before the semester starts because ebooks is one of my accommodations. No one's contacted me yet and I don't have my textbooks. So are they available for me? And do you know when they'll be ready? That's self-advocacy. And then example number three, so self-disclosure might be, I have cerebral palsy. Self-advocacy is, it's difficult for me to hold on to papers that are given to me in class. Can you, speaking to the professor, can you please email me papers? Can you email me everything, assignment directions in the syllabus so I can organize them on my computer? And that, that came from, an example of a student that I was working with, a student who had the accommodation of everything electronic, and professors were continuing to give this young man paper handouts, in class. So he needed to advocate for himself and say, after every class, can you email this to me? Can you email this to me? All right, so communicating about yourself, communicating to someone else is really, really important, right? That's the heart of self-advocacy, is being able to speak up for yourself. Yes, I don't know if there are any Star Wars fans in the room, maybe. So this is another recommendation I have for families and students, is to start practicing, and it may sound a little silly at first, but kind of start practicing with strangers. I don't literally mean strangers, but people who maybe you're not as comfortable with as your family members and seeing if you can explain to them some things that help you to be successful and explaining why those things help you to be successful. Because again, you're just practicing for that conversation that you're going to need to have once you get to college. All right, so the choice to self-disclose a disability in college is certainly a very personal choice. It's not my place to tell you or to even suggest that you should disclose if you have a disability. I know a lot of students say that they, kind of don't want the stigma of using accommodations. A lot of students, and I really respect this, say, well, I've been in special education, K through 12, I want to do college on my own. Okay. And I understand the why they're saying that. But what I want you to know is, if you disclose and if you register with the Disability Support Office, you're under no obligation to use those accommodations. You don't have to. You could register with the Disability Support Office once you're accepted and have the accommodations there and just choose not to use them. That's okay. And if you use them in the first semester, you don't have to use them again in the second semester. So it's not a permanent decision at all. So, I tell students, that I think I really recommend that you register and receive, get these accommodations, even if you think you're not going to need them. Because there may come a time when you do need them, and then they'll already be there for you. And so that's what this graphic is really about, that you are here in this presentation because you are thinking about going to college, and yes, you can do it. I really believe that every student can go to college. It may be 4 classes a semester. It may be 2 classes online. It may be 1 class that you're auditing, which means that you're not getting credit for it, but you're still sitting in the class and you're kind of dipping your toe in the water and seeing what it's like and what lectures are like. And there's so many options right now and different types of programs for college. So I think if you were here and you're listening to this presentation, you absolutely can do college. I think it's important to know, again, to kind of look back or to think about your high school experience and the things that have helped you to be successful. Okay. To acknowledge those and then to kind of put those things in place, once you get to college. I see a lot of students be successful, kind of doing those steps. All right, we are almost at the end here. So here are some things to do to kind of prepare you for college. If you've already been accepted at a college, number 1, I highly recommend you make a list of important phone numbers. So you can have these things in one place. I would recommend that you find the number or email address, for your academic advisor, for the Disability Support Office, Residential Life Office, the Counseling or Health Office, maybe instructors that you have, and then, support. Oh, right. And then, so your supports may vary, meaning if your disability office, has kind of that next tier of supports, maybe there are some contact numbers that you want, for them as well. Step number 2, registering with the Office of Accessibility Services. Number 3, practice speaking up for yourself in all kinds of situations. And then number 4, this was kind of silly, but it's really important. Practice checking your email every day. I have found this year in particular, professors are emailing students more than ever. Professors used to hand out a lot of things in class. And so that would be the way that they would see students and could tell them really important, things. But now a lot of it is through email. And sometimes students just, I know my high school daughter does not check her email every single day. So if that's you can identify with that, then start getting in a habit of checking your email, because colleges are going to send you all kinds of information. orientation dates, move-in dates, registration for classes, maybe acupuncture, testing dates, all kinds of things. So please, please check your email. And this is just a slide with some worksheets here that will help you get organized. And then if you're interested, if it's okay, Beth or Michael, if I could put I don't know if I have the link with me, if I could put it in the chat box. So I have a packet of kind of free worksheets that are some of the things, in this presentation, but there are also some things that families can just practice at home. It's about 15 pages. And so if anyone is interested, I'd just be happy to send those worksheets to them.
For sure, Jen.
That's it. I hope let me see what time I am. Okay, 5:40.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much. I don't want to interrupt you, but it sounds like, are we good for questions now? If anyone is ready, awesome. And please, folks, I am monitoring the chat box. If anyone would prefer to type a question in, I can relate in the Jennifer here. So we totally got you covered with that. And I mentioned in the chat that we will upload the presentation and all the slides and worksheets online. So we have you covered there. So you will not, no worries on that. So I don't see any questions in the chat right now, but anyone who's on the line here, please feel free to unmute yourselves and pipe up. I know Jennifer is a great resource, so we have about 20 minutes, so you're free to talk about what you need and want to talk about.
So it looks like someone might be wanting to speak, but they're muted. You're still on mute.
There we go. Hi, can you hear me? Great presentation. You've covered a lot of really important points. My daughter is actually in her 3rd year of college. She goes to a school that's out of state. My question is not academic. Surprisingly, she has done an amazing job, and her school has a terrific comprehensive support system that has worked really well for her. So academically, many of it's surpassed our original expectations, which has been a good thing. Where life is a disaster is in her dorm room. She's a kid with ADHD, and this is her first time really living away from home. And it's like she lives in a tornado zone and cannot stay organized. And I'm not academically, she's organized. She has a coach that works with her to keep track of that when she's got assignments due and how she needs to be pacing herself and all of that kind of thing. But there is no mom up there to go into the room and say, the clothes have to be folded up and put in the drawers, and all those papers that you've got can't just be strewn all around the room. Are there, and I feel like I have tried every system I can think of, are there any guidebooks, worksheets, lists of things that a student needs to do just to kind of organize their life, when they are at college? It's sort of those activities of daily living that are more of a challenge than the academics in our case.
Yeah, what a great question. First of all, I'll say you are not alone. The majority of families that I talk to have similar concerns. So my thought is, so this is probably part of her personality. This is the way that she has been. I'm getting, is her room at home very similar?
Yes. And
okay.
Yeah, so we've tried stuff at home, and at least, at home, I'm around to occasionally go in and say, this is what we need to do. But none of that seems to stick up here. And I can write lists till, the cows come home, and they don't, the checklist of things to do gets lost in the chaos. So I don't know if there are any technological options, or anything I haven't thought of that helps in this kind of a case.
Sure, sure. Gosh, that's such a great question. Well, I would definitely recommend, well, I would probably ask her first. I would have a conversation with her, just not knowing her. You've probably already talked about these things with her, and asking if she recognizes this as a problem for herself. She may not. She may think this is great, and this is, and she knows where everything is, because that's what my daughters tell me. Mom, I know everything's disorganized, but I know where everything is. Sometimes students who live with roommates, there's kind of natural consequences. If they're living with someone who is neat or doesn't like to put up with the mess. So sometimes for that reason, I encourage, families to have a student living with a roommate, because sometimes when they hear it from mom, they can disregard it really easily. But when it comes from a peer or other friends who come into the room, they listen to the exact same thing that you just said. So I would probably recommend, maybe starting when she comes home, I would start kind of establishing a routine or a habit kind of in person, so you're there to reinforce that rather than kind of doing it from a distance, at this point. But, I also try to figure out what motivates students. So it could be if there's something that, so for example, my daughter, when she was in 2nd or 3rd grade, her teacher told me that she was a stuffer. She just stuffs things into her backpack, into her desk. She's a stuffer. So I told my daughter every Friday, I'm going to check in with her teacher. And, if she was organized, she probably organized it on Friday morning, right before I sent the email. We would go for Froggy's frozen yogurt. So that's what I mean by motivation. If there's something that motivates your daughter, if she's not intrinsically wanting to keep things organized, maybe there's something else that will motivate her. And it may just be kind of this stage. And I know that's not a great answer. Maybe when she gets an apartment on her own and it's her own thing, she may, change her habits and behavior a little bit. But it's not a quick fix, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'd think about the motivation piece.
There may be some more avenues to explore with that. So
yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the suggestion.
Great question. Thank you for asking.
I just want to pop in, Jen. I know that there's a lot of other questions, so I'm going to say this really quick. Natural consequences, I'm a big fan of always, first off, but also, I don't know if you have considered, and I don't know whether she would accept an independent living skills trainer, somebody to take it. So as a mom of a 28-year-old who doesn't want to hear anything that mom has to say, I find that taking it out of my hands is a really good way to go. And sometimes that's a way that people will accept support that's not, when it's not coming from their family member. So independent living skills trainers, and there are people who do organization out there who go into homes and help people organize. That might be something as well, like organizational coaches, things like that. Feel free to reach out to us if you want more information about that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So in the chat, Jennifer, we have a question from Ursula. Ursula would like to know what the signs of a good disability program are. A good college disability program. Let me clarify that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I kind of have a couple thoughts about that. So, my first thought is I love it when a college's website has the disability office that's really easy to find. And I didn't mention that. I think it was on one of the slides, but I always encourage students when they're looking at a college to go into that top search bar on the college's website and type in the word, usually the word disability will pull up any articles, anything in the news. Usually the first kind of result there is the disability support office. And I encourage students to do that first. I think, the website can kind of tell you a lot about the services that, that office offers. Sometimes the website is pretty minimal and sometimes it's really extensive. And I think it being extensive and having a lot of updated offerings is a really good indicator. But that's not to say that, pretty minimal websites also have really great, professionals working in them. So no matter what, I would definitely recommend that you call that office, that you ask to set up a meeting, ask to set up a phone call. And I think kind of, again, look for the subtleties of the person who you're talking with, about how willing they are to set up meetings with you. I think that's really important, that they are, welcoming and encouraging, and that it seems like it's something that they want to do rather than, kind of brushing you aside. So I would kind of use those two indicators, the phone call, kind of gauging the interaction on the phone call, and then also, looking at the website and looking at the amount of offerings.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jennifer. So I don't see any other questions in the chat. So anyone else who's on here, we've got about 12 minutes, give or take. So if there's anything, burning on your mind, now's the time. It's all a safe.
Diana has her hand raised. Go ahead, Diana.
Hi. So I'm wondering when you can tell if you need a specialized program like FAMES or Landmark College, or if you can just, really go to a typical college and just rely on supports from the disabilities office for any accommodations.
What a great question. Diana, I just want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Diana, yeah.
Yeah, okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for asking that question. It's a really kind of personalized, answer. I would maybe kind of look at, can I ask Diana what year you are in school right now? And if you don't feel comfortable sharing, that's okay.
I am a junior.
Okay, perfect. So I would, kind of think about and kind of take a look around, kind of your school team right now, and kind of think about your schedule. So think about the types of support that you have in high school right now. And sometimes the type of support, it's kind of hidden, I guess. Sometimes, we don't even know that we're receiving, certain help from a certain teacher, or things that may be in our schedule, that we're not aware of. Or you may be really aware of, accommodations, and you may be really aware of, a 504 and IEP. So I would kind of base it off of the supports you're receiving right now. So if you're receiving a lot of support, and granted, you still have another year in high school, hopefully where, the school team will be helping you to be more independent. So I would also be, looking at your schedule next year as well, but kind of thinking about maybe the number of days, per week that you receive support. Kind of look at your schedule and say, do I have very little support maybe in my 4 classes, or do I have a little support in all 4 classes? And so using that to kind of be a roadmap to guide you to what types of support, that you might be looking for college.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking. It's a great question.
And so Ursula, I do see your chat. I'm sorry you were out of the room when Jennifer spoke on your question, but we do have this session recorded. But if there's, Jennifer, anything else that comes to mind for Ursula's question on what makes a college disability program really great, it looks like we have another minute or 2 for that.
Oh, okay. Let me think if there's something else I could add. I guess kind of superficially, I would say, just to look at the college's website, the general college's website, and then see how easy it is to find the disability office and look at the disability, office services that are listed on the website. I think really having a phone call with the director of that office and or meeting their staff is really important. Not to say that colleges or universities that have a big staff are better than those that don't. I'll just say, in my experience, sometimes where there's only one person working in a staff, sometimes that person can become overwhelmed. So, just asking those types of questions. And I think that's one of the worksheets that I either included on the last slide, or that I'm going to, include kind of in that PDF workbook, that if you'd like to, sign up for in the chat. I have 6 questions to ask the Disability Service Office. And one of the questions is, how many full-time and part-time staff are here? Just because that can make your student, the ability to get appointments easier or more difficult, depending on how many staff there are. But definitely have a phone call with that office.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And I think so. We have about 8 minutes left. I just want to give a quick shout out. I know it's part of our program's funding. We would love if anyone on this call tonight would be willing to do a quick little poll evaluation. I know tonight's session was free of charge, but we'd really appreciate just a quick, takes only a minute, just to kind of rate us on how we're doing, what you like, how can we improve. We'd really appreciate that. And I think Beth, if you can, thanks, Beth.
Michael, I see a couple other hands up. Is that okay if we?
Oh, absolutely.
Do we have a few more minutes? Emily, you have a question?
I have a comment.
Sure.
I went to Manchester Community College from like 2012 and I graduated in 2018. But I have to say, in my personal experience, that the way that they had their academic advisors in their DRC was there were like 3 different advisors for like depending on the type of disability that you have. Like I had the advisor that specifically specialized in physical disabilities, and I have to say that a good part of your having a good college experience as a disabled person is having that good academic advisor.
Yeah, excellent.
That's a plus, definitely.
Great. Yeah, excellent point. Great.
I just wanted to jump in sort of in response to what Diana had asked about at the beginning of her question, how to take a look at what's happening now in school and make that connection to what type of program would be most appropriate for your skills and what you still need to learn and develop. That's something we can do at CPAC. So if you reach out to Michael or myself, we can set up a time either with me or with one of our consultants who work with transition age youth and sort of talk about a little bit more about that. Like, are we doing everything we need to be doing in school and high school in order to help students be most successful in those programs? And there might be more skills that you need to build on, because sometimes you're working so hard in school just to get through those academic classes that there are some other things that need to be worked on that kind of take a back seat. So just know that we are here to support both families and students with figuring that out.
Yeah, Beth, a great jumping off point, and thanks so much for that. And I think you're right that we're totally here for anyone on the call, and especially for young adults here. I mean, we have the Youth Advisory Board, and Emily's also one of our members here, giving her a shout out. And a lot of the work we do is really to not only help young adults build leadership skills and increase our self-advocacy, but a lot of the work we do really helps inform professionals, educators, entire systems on how to better serve young adults. And so it's a really great offering. And like I said, my email, I posted in the chat, but just verbally, I'll say it's mscanlon, which is SCANLON @cpacinc.org. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, or you might know any young adult who'd like to be involved in some leadership opportunities, please let me know and we'll have a chat.
And you can just be added to our mailing list. So as activities and opportunities come along, that's a specific Youth Advisory Board email list. So that's something you can email Michael and ask him to do. And I'm going to plug for our youth chat on April 27th at 3 o'clock. We'll be sending information out about that on that Youth Advisory Board list.
All We have time for like one last question. If anyone has anything, I know what it's like. There's like a minute to go. Something comes up in someone's head. We've got time for maybe one more if anyone wants to pop on.
I see Diana's hand. I know she had her hand up earlier as well.
Who was that you're saying?
Oh, it may have been an accident. I don't know. I see your hand raised, Diana. I wanted to give you another chance because I liked your question the first time so much.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear the name for it. My question is, I'm trying to figure out, because I just realized starting to get on a schedule of once a week doing laundry, once a week checking, or twice a day doing email, stuff like that. How would you recommend starting to integrate that?
Let's see. Do you use schedules, either something in your phone or a piece of paper where you can write down all the maybe the different things that you do during the day or that you do during a week?
Right now I'll use like alarms on my watch or my phone, but I'm not sure that's really the most effective way of doing it.
Yeah, that's such a great question because there are so many different types of, planners and organizers and alarms. And so I just recommend that you try all different kinds of those, those things. I know some students who use kind of the smart devices like the Google Home or the Alexa. Some students even bring them to college and they set alarms and reminders to take medication, to do laundry, to go to class. Some students, like you said, put that into their watch or will use their cell phone. So if you really like technology, those kind of tools, are great ideas. I also like recommending tools that are visual. So if it's a whiteboard, maybe that you have in your house, I have one on my refrigerator, on the back of your bedroom door, maybe, wherever a really highly visible place. And different people's brains work in different ways. So some people really like a month calendar because they like seeing, 30 days at a time. Some people like a week calendar because they only want to see 7 days at a time. And some people's brains really only want to see 1 day at a time and say, what is my schedule for the day? So I would just encourage you, to play around with some of those different kind of tools. And it sounds like you already have some great tools already that you're using. And I'm really proud of you for working on your laundry already, and some of those other things that you're doing. So, keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, so I wish we could go longer, but we are at 6 o'clock. So I just want to again thank Jennifer. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. It's been a pleasure and we all learned so much. And again, just repeating, this will be posted online. It's recorded. We'll get the PowerPoints and the slides to you all online. And I just want to again thank you for your time and attention. And it's been awesome. And we'll talk again soon. Thanks so much.
Sounds great. Thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.